If you don't transfer 50 million to this account by midnight, everyone will know what Sofia Corleone really did in Chicago. Tony Barzini stared at the text message on his phone, his blood turning to ice as he stood in the marble foyer of his Beverly Hills mansion. The words blurred as his mind raced. Not because of the money being demanded, but because of the name. Sofia. His sister Emma's best friend. The woman he'd been falling hopelessly in love with for the past 6 months. The woman currently upstairs in his bed, wearing nothing but his shirt and a smile that had made him believe in forever. Hey there, amazing viewers. Welcome back to another incredible story that's going to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't soon forget. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you're new to our channel family, please hit that subscribe button because trust me, you don't want to miss the stories we share here. Your support means everything to me. The second message arrived before Tony could process the first. The warehouse fire that killed 3 people. The stolen medical supplies. The fake identity. Choose wisely, Mr. Barzini. Tony's hands trembled as he read the words again. Warehouse fire. 3 people dead. The phone slipped from his fingers, clattering against the Italian marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through his chest like a gunshot. Sofia appeared at the top of the grand staircase, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, concern etched across her beautiful face. Tony, I heard something fall. Is everything? She stopped mid-sentence when she saw him standing there, frozen, staring at his phone like it contained his death sentence. And maybe it did. Because if what that message implied was true, then the woman he loved, the woman who'd brought light back into his carefully controlled world, wasn't who she claimed to be. Tony. Sofia descended the stairs gracefully, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. You look like you've seen a ghost. More like I'm looking at one, Tony thought, but couldn't bring himself to say the words. 6 months ago, Sofia had walked back into his life through his sister Emma's friendship, and everything had changed. The billionaire who'd sworn off love after being betrayed one too many times had found himself completely undone by her laugh, her intelligence, her way of looking at him like he was more than just his bank account. Now, as she approached him with worry in her amber eyes, Tony felt his world tilting off its axis. The phone buzzed again on the floor between them. I need to check this, Tony said, his voice hoarse as he bent to retrieve the device. The third message was a photo, grainy surveillance footage of a woman running from a burning building, her face obscured by smoke and shadows. But Tony recognized the build, the hair, the way she moved. His heart hammered against his ribs. Tony, you're scaring me. Sofia reached out to touch his arm, and he flinched away instinctively. The hurt that flashed across her face nearly broke him, but he couldn't let her see the phone. Not yet. Not until he understood what this meant. I have to make a call, he said, backing toward his office. Business emergency. At 11 p.m.? Sofia's voice carried a note of suspicion that cut through Tony like a blade. Tony, what's going on? But he was already disappearing into his office, closing the door behind him with shaking hands. Tony leaned against the solid oak, his mind spinning with possibilities, each one worse than the last. If Sofia had been involved in something that got people killed. Another buzz. Another message. You have 11 hours, Mr. Barzini. 50 million, or the evidence goes to the FBI, the media, and everyone you care about, including your sweet sister Emma. Tony's blood ran cold. Emma, his younger sister, the only family he had left after their parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Emma, who'd been Sofia's best friend since college, who'd brought Sofia back into their lives with such joy and excitement. Emma, who had no idea her best friend might be a killer. The office door handle turned, and Sofia slipped inside before Tony could stop her. She was still wearing his white dress shirt, but now she'd pulled on a pair of his sweatpants, cinched tight around her small waist. Under any other circumstances, the sight of her in his clothes would have made his heart race for entirely different reasons. Don't shut me out, she said quietly, closing the door behind her. Whatever's wrong, we can figure it out together. Tony stared at her, this woman who'd become everything to him in such a short time. Sofia, who volunteered at the children's hospital every weekend. Sofia, who cried during commercials about abandoned animals. Sofia, who'd held him all night after the anniversary of his parents' death, whispering words of comfort while he grieved. Could the same woman have been involved in something that killed 3 innocent people? Sofia, Tony said carefully, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to ask you something. and I need you to be completely honest with me." She nodded, stepping closer, and Tony caught the familiar scent of her perfume. Jasmine and vanilla, a combination that had become his favorite thing in the world. It made what he was about to ask even more devastating. "Have you ever been to Chicago?" The question seemed innocent enough, but Tony watched Sophia's face like his life depended on it. And maybe it did. Because if she lied to him now, if she looked him in the eye and denied something he could easily verify, then everything between them had been built on lies. Sophia went very still. Her amber eyes, which had been soft with concern moments before, became guarded, careful. It was a subtle change, but Tony had built a billion-dollar empire by reading people's faces, by knowing when someone was hiding something. "Why would you ask me that?" she said, her voice steady but different somehow. Distant. "Just answer me. Please." For a long moment, they stared at each other across the expanse of his office. A space filled with awards and achievements, photographs of him shaking hands with world leaders and celebrities. But none of that mattered now. Nothing mattered except the truth that seemed to be slipping away from him with every second of Sophia's silence. "Tony," Sophia said finally, "there are things about my past that I haven't told you. Things that happened before I met Emma in college. But whatever you're thinking." Tony's phone buzzed again. This time, the message contained an address. * the warehouse where it happened. Go see for yourself. Then decide if 50 million is worth keeping your girlfriend's secret. *. "I have to go somewhere," Tony said abruptly, grabbing his car keys from the desk. "Now!" "Tony, wait." Sophia caught his arm as he moved toward the door. Her touch burned through the fabric of his shirt, reminding him of all the nights she'd touched him with love instead of desperation. "Whatever someone told you, whatever you think you know, please let me explain first." Tony stopped, his hand on the doorknob. Everything in him wanted to turn around, to pull her into his arms and forget the messages, forget the implications, forget everything except the way she made him feel. But the photograph was seared into his memory, a figure running from flames, leaving destruction behind. "Did people die because of you?" he asked without turning around. The silence that followed was answer enough. When Tony finally looked back at her, Sophia was crying, silent tears streaming down her face, her hands clenched at her sides. She looked young and terrified and heartbroken, and it took everything in Tony's power not to go to her. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt," she whispered. "You have to believe me." Tony felt his heart crack clean in half. Because he did believe her. That was the hell of it. Even now, even with evidence mounting against her, he believed that Sophia Corleone was incapable of deliberately causing harm. But intent and consequence were two different things, and 3 people were still dead. "I'll be back," he said, his voice hollow. Just don't leave. Please." And with that, Tony Barzini walked out of his own house, leaving the woman he loved standing alone in his office, both of them knowing that everything had just changed forever. As he climbed into his Aston Martin and typed the warehouse address into his GPS, Tony's phone buzzed one final time. Smart choice. But remember, 11 hours. 50 million. Or everyone you love pays the price. The engine roared to life, drowning out the sound of Tony's world falling apart. In the rearview mirror, he could see Sophia silhouetted in his office window, watching him drive away into the night to uncover the truth that might destroy them both. What had she done? And more importantly, what was he going to do about it? The warehouse district of Chicago's South Side looked like a graveyard of broken dreams, even worse at 2 in the morning. Tony pulled his Aston Martin between 2 abandoned buildings, the luxury car absurdly out of place among the rust and decay. The address from the mysterious text led him to a skeletal structure, blackened beams reaching toward the sky like accusing fingers. 3 years. That's how long ago this place had burned, according to the faded crime scene tape still fluttering in the wind. Tony stepped out of his car, his Italian leather shoes crunching on broken glass and debris. The acrid smell of old smoke still lingered in the air, mixing with the scent of rain and urban decay. His phone rang, startling him in the silence. Emma's name flashed on the screen, and Tony's heart clenched. His sister, 26 years old, brilliant, and fiercely protective of the people she loved, including Sophia. "Tony, where are you?" "Sophia called me crying, saying you'd left and she didn't know why." Emma's voice was sharp with worry. "What the hell is going on?" Tony closed his eyes, leaning against his car. How could he explain this to Emma without destroying her? Sophia had been her best friend for 8 years, the sister she'd never had after their parents died. They'd traveled the world together, shared secrets, built dreams side by side. I need you to listen to me very carefully, Tony said, his breath visible in the cold air. How well do you really know Sophia? I mean, from before college. What kind of question is that? Tony, you're scaring me. Just answer me. Has she ever talked about her life before she met you? Her family, where she grew up? Emma was quiet for a moment, and Tony could picture her face. The same green eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, now clouded with confusion. She said her parents died when she was young. That she was in foster care for a while. Tony, why are you asking me this? Foster care. That was more than Sophia had ever told him. In 6 months of falling in love, she'd deflected every question about her past with kisses and subject changes. He'd thought it was because the memories were painful, not because they were dangerous. Did she ever mention Chicago? No, never. She's from Portland, remember? We met at Northwestern, but she transferred there from Portland State. Emma's voice was getting smaller, more frightened. Tony, please tell me what's happening. Before Tony could answer, a black sedan pulled up behind his car, headlights cutting through the darkness. Tony tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward the gun he kept in his jacket, a precaution that had seemed paranoid until tonight. The car door opened, and a man stepped out. Mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit that somehow looked natural in this wasteland of urban decay. He approached with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being in control. Mr. Barzini, the man said, his voice carrying a slight accent Tony couldn't place. Thank you for coming. Who the hell are you? Tony demanded, keeping his phone line open so Emma could hear. My name is Victor Laszlo, the man said, stopping just outside of arm's reach. I represent certain interests that have been watching your girlfriend very closely. Tony. Emma's voice was tiny through the phone speaker. Tony, what's happening? I'll call you back, Tony said quickly, ending the call. He slipped the phone into his pocket, his eyes never leaving Victor's face. What do you want? Victor smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. I want to tell you a story, Mr. Barzini, about a young woman who got involved with the wrong people, made the wrong choices, and caused the deaths of 3 innocent people. Tony's stomach churned. If you're talking about Sophia Corleone. Yes, that's the name she uses now. Very different from her real name. Victor pulled out a tablet, swiping to bring up a photograph. Have you ever seen this woman before? The image showed a younger Sophia, maybe 19 or 20, standing next to a man Tony didn't recognize. She was wearing different clothes, had shorter hair, but it was definitely her. What made his blood run cold was the setting. She was standing in front of the very warehouse that now lay in ruins behind them. This photograph was taken 6 weeks before the fire, Victor continued. Your girlfriend was working for a man named Jack Dawson. Have you heard that name? Tony shook his head, but something cold was spreading through his chest. Jack Dawson ran medical supply shipments through this warehouse. Officially, they were legitimate pharmaceutical deliveries to hospitals and clinics throughout the Midwest. Unofficially, Victor swiped to another photo, this one showing crates being loaded onto trucks in the dead of night. He was stealing cancer medications, diabetes supplies, life-saving drugs that were meant for children's hospitals, and selling them on the black market. That's impossible, Tony said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sophia volunteers at children's hospitals. She would never steal from sick children? Victor's laugh was humorless. Mr. Barzini, people do desperate things when they're desperate. And Sophia, or Sarah Chun, as she was known then, was very desperate indeed. Sarah Chun. The name hit Tony like a physical blow. He thought of all the times he'd heard Sophia talking on the phone, sometimes switching unconsciously into what she'd claimed was rusty high school Spanish. But now, listening to Victor's pronunciation, he wondered if she'd actually been speaking Chinese. You're lying, Tony said, but even as the words left his mouth, pieces were falling into place. Sophia's expertise with computers, her knowledge of medical terminology, the way she sometimes seemed to know more about business logistics than someone with her background should. Victor swiped to another image, a police report, heavily redacted but with key details visible. October 15th, 3 years ago. An electrical fire started in the warehouse, allegedly from faulty wiring. 3 security guards died in the blaze, men with families, men who were just doing their jobs. By the time firefighters arrived, the building was fully engulfed. If it was an electrical fire, the fire was set deliberately, Victor interrupted, to destroy evidence. The FBI had been investigating Jack Dawson's operation for months. They were closing in, and someone needed to make sure all evidence of the stolen medical supplies disappeared. Tony felt sick. And you think Sophia? I don't think anything, Mr. Barzini. I know. Victor swiped to a security camera image, time-stamped just hours before the fire. It showed Sophia, unmistakably Sophia, entering the warehouse with what appeared to be an accelerant canister. She wasn't just working for Jack Dawson. She was sleeping with him. And when their operation was about to be exposed, she helped him burn it all down. The world seemed to tilt around Tony. He gripped his car for support, his mind reeling. The woman he loved, the woman he'd been planning to propose to next month, had been involved in something that killed 3 innocent people. Why are you telling me this? Tony managed to ask. What do you want? Justice, Mr. Barzini. Jack Dawson disappeared after the fire, but we've been tracking him for 3 years. Last month, we finally found him, living under an assumed name in Costa Rica, enjoying the millions he made from selling medicine meant for dying children. Victor's voice hardened. But he's not our only target. Sophia had nothing to do with. Sophia Chin was Jack Dawson's partner in every sense of the word. She helped plan the thefts, she helped coordinate the sales, and she helped destroy the evidence when they got caught. Victor put the tablet away, his cold eyes fixed on Tony's face. But here's the interesting part, Mr. Barzini. We have evidence that could put her away for the rest of her life. Murder, arson, conspiracy, theft of federal medical supplies. But we're willing to make a deal. Tony's blood went cold. What kind of deal? Help us bring in Jack Dawson, and we'll consider reducing the charges against your girlfriend. She serves maybe 10 years instead of life without parole. You want me to betray her. I want you to help her do the right thing. For the first time in her life. Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. You have until tomorrow night, Mr. Barzini. Convince Sophia to help us find Jack Dawson, or we turn everything over to the FBI. Her new life, her friendship with your sister, your relationship, all of it ends. Victor started walking back toward his car, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Barzini? That $50 million demand you received? That wasn't from us. Someone else knows about Sophia's past, someone who's using it to hurt both of you. You might want to figure out who before it's too late. The black sedan drove away, leaving Tony alone with the ruins and the weight of impossible choices. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. I know you hate me now, but please come home so I can explain. I love you, Tony. That's the only truth that matters. Tony stared at the message, then at the burned skeleton of the warehouse where 3 men had died. Somewhere in Costa Rica, Jack Dawson was living free on blood money. Somewhere in Los Angeles, an anonymous blackmailer was threatening to expose everything for $50 million. And somewhere in his Beverly Hills mansion, the woman he loved was waiting for him to decide whether their future was worth fighting for. Tony got back in his car and drove toward the hardest conversation of his life, knowing that by sunrise, everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and justice would be forever changed. Tony found Sophia exactly where he'd left her, standing in his office, still wearing his clothes, her eyes red from crying. But she'd been busy while he was gone. His laptop was open on the desk, and scattered around it were documents he'd never seen before. Birth certificates, legal name changes, immigration papers. Before you say anything, Sophia said as he entered, her voice steady despite the tears, I need you to know that everything I told you about loving you was true. Everything else. I can explain. Tony looked at the papers spread across his desk. Sarah Chun, born in San Francisco. Legal name changed to Sophia Corleone 5 years ago. Immigration documents showing entry into the United States from Canada, where she'd apparently been living under yet another identity. How many names have you had? Tony asked quietly. 4. Sophia's answer was barely a whisper. Sarah Chun was who I was born as. Maria Santos was who I became when I went into hiding. Sophia Corleone is who I've been since I met Emma. And Tony, with you, I finally became who I was meant to be. Tony picked up one of the documents, a death certificate for Sarah Chun, dated 3 years ago. The same week as the warehouse fire. You faked your own death. I had to. Sophia moved closer, her eyes desperate. Tony, what did they tell you? What do you think I did? I think you helped Jack Dawson steal medical supplies from dying children. I think you helped him burn down a warehouse to cover your tracks. I think 3 security guards died because of choices you made. Tony's voice was getting louder with each accusation. Tell me I'm wrong, Sophia. Tell me none of that is true. Sophia closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. When she opened them again, Tony saw something that made his heart break all over again. Not guilt, but grief so deep it seemed to consume her from within. I was 19 years old, she said quietly. My foster parents had kicked me out when I turned 18. I was living in my car, working 3 jobs just to afford community college. When Jack offered me a job at his warehouse, it seemed like a miracle. What kind of job? Data entry, he said. Processing shipping manifests, tracking inventory. I was good with computers, and the pay was triple what I was making anywhere else. Sophia sat down heavily in one of Tony's leather chairs. I thought I was so lucky. Tony remained standing, needing the distance between them. When did you find out what he was really doing? 3 months after I started working there. I was updating the inventory system when I noticed discrepancies. Medical supplies going out, but not being properly documented. Shipments to addresses that didn't exist. Sophia looked up at him, her amber eyes pleading for understanding. I should have quit right then. I should have gone to the police. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because Jack found me running the reports, and he... Sophia's voice trailed off, her hands trembling. Tony, do you know what it's like to have no one in the world? No family, no safety net, no place to go if you lose your job. So you became his accomplice. I became his victim. Sophia stood up abruptly, anger flashing in her eyes for the first time. Jack Dawson was twice my age, and he had connections I couldn't even imagine. When I threatened to expose him, he showed me photos of what happened to people who crossed his organization. Tony, I was a 19-year-old kid who'd been thrown away by the system her entire life. I was terrified. Tony felt his resolve wavering. The woman standing before him wasn't the hardened criminal Victor had described. She was someone who'd been trapped, manipulated, forced into impossible choices. But 3 men were still dead. The fire, Sophia. Tell me about the fire. Sophia's face crumpled. That's the part one can never forgive myself for. Jack said the FBI was closing in, that we needed to destroy the evidence or we'd all go to prison. He said if I helped him, we'd disappear together, start over somewhere safe. So you helped him burn it down. I thought the warehouse was empty. Sophia's voice broke completely. Jack swore to me it was empty. He said he'd made sure all the security guards were off duty, that no one would get hurt. I never would have. Tony, you have to believe me. I never would have done it if I'd known people were inside. Tony sank into his desk chair, the weight of her words crushing him. He could hear the truth in her voice, could see the genuine horror and remorse in her eyes. But intention didn't change the outcome. What happened after the fire? Jack disappeared. Left me behind to face the consequences alone. Sophia's laugh was bitter. I realized then that I'd never been his partner. I'd just been another tool for him to use and discard. So I ran. To Canada. First to Mexico, then Canada. I lived under the radar for 2 years, working cash jobs, always looking over my shoulder. But Tony, those 2 years taught me something important. I couldn't run from what I'd done forever. I had to find a way to make it right. Tony looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Sophia went to the window, staring out at the city lights. Do you remember when I told you I volunteer at children's hospitals because I want to help kids who don't have anyone? Yes. That wasn't the whole truth. I volunteer there because I know that some of the medicine I helped steal was meant for those children. Every kid I read to, every family I comfort, it's my way of trying to pay back what I took from them. The admission hung in the air between them. Tony thought about all the weekends Sophia had spent at the hospital, how she'd come home exhausted but somehow lighter, as if the work was feeding her soul in a way nothing else could. I've donated almost every penny I've earned over the past 3 years to medical charities, Sophia continued. Anonymous donations, different names, but always to organizations that help get medicine to children who need it. It doesn't bring those security guards back, and it doesn't undo what I did, but it's something. Tony's phone buzzed on the desk. Another message from the unknown number. Time's running out, Mr. Barzini. Have you made your choice? Sophia saw the message before Tony could hide it. Her face went white. Someone's blackmailing you because of me. $50 million, Tony said quietly. By midnight tonight, or they expose everything to the FBI and the media. Oh God! Sophia sank back into the chair, her head in her hands. This is exactly what I was afraid of. I never should have let myself fall in love with you. I never should have put you at risk. Tony studied her face, seeing not the criminal Victor had described, but a woman who'd been carrying the weight of her mistakes for 3 years. A woman who'd been trying to build a life worth living despite a past that threatened to destroy her. His phone rang. Emma's name on the screen. "I have to take this," Tony said, accepting the call. "Tony, I've been researching Sophia's background," Emma said without preamble. "Something's wrong. None of the information she gave me about her childhood checks out. Her parents didn't die in a car accident. There's no record of them existing at all." Tony looked at Sophia, who was watching him with resignation. There's more. I found newspaper articles from Chicago about a warehouse fire 3 years ago. 3 security guards died, and there's a police sketch of a suspect who looks exactly like Sophia. Tony, what has she gotten you into?" Before Tony could answer, the office door burst open. 2 men in dark suits entered, followed by a woman with silver hair and cold eyes. FBI badges flashed as they spread throughout the room. "Sophia Chun," the woman announced. "You're under arrest for arson, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. You have the right to remain silent." Tony watched in horror as they handcuffed Sophia, her eyes never leaving his face. "Tony," she said as they led her toward the door, "I need you to know that falling in love with you was the first real thing I'd done in years. Whatever happens next, don't let them make you believe that was a lie." And then she was gone, leaving Tony alone with the FBI agents and the wreckage of everything he'd thought he knew about love. The FBI interrogation room was nothing like the ones in movies. Just gray walls, fluorescent lighting, and a metal table bolted to the floor. Tony sat across from Agent Rose DeWitt, a woman whose severe expression suggested she'd seen enough criminals to last several lifetimes. "Mr. Barzini," Agent DeWitt said, sliding a thick folder across the table, "we need to talk about your relationship with Sarah Chun." "Her name is Sophia Corleone," Tony corrected automatically. "No, sir. Her legal name is Sarah Chun. Sophia Corleone is an identity she assumed after fleeing Chicago 3 years ago." Agent DeWitt opened the folder, revealing surveillance photos, bank records, and crime scene images. "We've been tracking her for 18 months. Tony stared at a photo of Sophia entering a bank in Toronto, taken 2 years ago. She looked different, thinner, more haunted, constantly looking over her shoulder. It broke his heart to see her that way. "How much do you know about her activities before she came to Los Angeles?" Agent DeWitt asked. "She told me her parents died when she was young, that she was in foster care. That much is true. Sarah Chun aged out of the California foster system at 18 with no family, no support network, and limited education. She was vulnerable, which made her perfect prey for someone like Jack Dawson." Agent DeWitt pulled out another photo. A man in his 40s with cold eyes and an expensive suit. "Jack Dawson has been stealing and reselling medical supplies for over a decade. His operation was responsible for shortages at children's hospitals across 7 states. Tony felt sick. "And Sophia, Sarah, worked for him?" "Initially, yes. Our investigation suggests she was manipulated into the operation through a combination of financial desperation and psychological coercion." Agent DeWitt's voice softened slightly. "Mr. Barzini, your girlfriend was a victim before she became a perpetrator. Then why arrest her? Why not help her? Because 3 security guards died in that warehouse fire, and someone has to answer for their deaths." Agent DeWitt leaned forward. "But here's what's interesting. We have reason to believe Sarah Chun wasn't the only person who helped set that fire." Tony's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "Jack Dawson had other associates, other people who profited from his operation. Someone with enough money and connections to track Sarah to Los Angeles. Someone who might want to eliminate her as a potential witness." "The blackmail messages," Tony breathed. "You've been receiving threats?" Agent DeWitt's pen was poised over her notepad. Tony showed her the messages on his phone. Agent DeWitt read them carefully, her expression growing more troubled with each line. "Mr. Barzini, these messages aren't from someone trying to extort money from you. They're from someone trying to force Sarah into the open." Agent DeWitt looked up from the phone. "Someone who wants her dead." Before Tony could respond, his phone rang. Emma's name on the screen. "I need to take this," Tony said, and Agent DeWitt nodded. "Tony." Emma's voice was shaky, frightened. "There are men outside my apartment. They're not police. They're wearing expensive suits and driving a black Mercedes. I think they're watching me." Tony's blood went cold. Get out of there right now. Go to a hotel, somewhere public with lots of people." "Tony, what's happening? Why would anyone be watching me?" "Because you're my sister, and someone is trying to use you to get to me." Tony looked at Agent DeWitt, who was already making phone calls. I'm going to send FBI agents to escort you somewhere safe, okay? FBI agents? Tony, you're scaring me. I'm scared too, Tony admitted. But I need you to know that whatever you hear about Sophia in the news, it's not the whole story. She's not the person they're going to make her out to be. After Emma hung up, Agent DeWitt finished her call and turned back to Tony. We're sending a protective detail to your sister, she said. But Mr. Barzini, I need you to understand something. As long as you're associated with Sarah Chun, everyone you care about is in danger. Then let me see her, Tony demanded. Let me talk to Sophia. That's not possible. She's being held as a flight risk. I have $50 million, Tony said desperately. I can post bail, hire the best lawyers. Mr. Barzini, there is no bail for suspected terrorist activities. Terrorist activities? Agent DeWitt pulled out another folder, this one marked with red tape. The medical supplies Sarah helped steal weren't just expensive medications. Some of them were experimental drugs being developed for biodefense applications. In the wrong hands, they could be used to create biological weapons. Tony felt the room spinning around him. That's impossible. Sophia would never. Sarah Chin may not have known what she was stealing, but someone did. Someone with the knowledge and connections to turn stolen medical research into weapons. Agent DeWitt's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it grimly. Mr. Barzini, we just intercepted communications suggesting that Jack Dawson is no longer in Costa Rica. We believe he's en route to Los Angeles. Why would he come back? Because he needs Sarah Chin dead before she can testify against him. And he's willing to kill anyone who gets in his way. Tony's phone buzzed with another message. Change of plans, Mr. Barzini. We don't want your money anymore. We want the girl. Bring Sarah Chen to the warehouse district at midnight, and your sister lives. Refuse, and everyone you love dies. Agent DeWitt read the message over Tony's shoulder, her face grim. Mr. Barzini, this confirms what we suspected. Jack Dawson is back, and he's desperate. Can you protect Emma? We'll do our best, but he's had 3 years to plan this. He knows how law enforcement operates. Agent DeWitt stood up. There is another option. What? Let us use you as bait. Help us draw Jack Dawson out into the open where we can arrest him. Tony stared at her. You want me to pretend to hand Sophia over to him? We want you to help us end this before more innocent people die. Agent DeWitt's voice was urgent. Mr. Barzini, Jack Dawson has killed at least 7 people that we know of. He won't hesitate to kill your sister, Sarah, and you if it serves his purposes. Tony thought about Emma, terrified and hiding from men who wanted to use her to hurt him. He thought about Sophia, sitting in a federal holding cell, probably blaming herself for putting everyone she loved in danger. He thought about 3 security guards who'd died in a warehouse fire, and their families who'd never gotten justice. What would I have to do? Tony asked quietly. Before Agent DeWitt could answer, Tony's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Sophia's name. How is she calling me from federal custody? Tony asked. Agent DeWitt's face went white. She's not. We lost contact with the transport vehicle 20 minutes ago. Tony answered the phone with shaking hands. Tony. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper, terrified and desperate. I don't know where I am. There was an accident. Men with guns. Tony, I think they killed the federal agents. I managed to get away, but I don't know for how long. Where are you? I don't know. Some kind of warehouse district. Tony, I can see the ruins of the building where the fire happened. They brought me back here. Agent DeWitt was already coordinating search teams, her voice urgent as she barked orders into her radio. Sophia, listen to me, Tony said. Hide. Find somewhere safe and hide until. The line went dead. Agent DeWitt looked at Tony with grim determination. Mr. Barzini, it appears we're out of options. Jack Dawson has Sarah, your sister is in protective custody, and we have maybe an hour before he kills them both. What do you need me to do? Help us save the woman you love. The warehouse district at night was a maze of shadows and broken dreams, but Tony knew these streets now. He'd walked them in his designer shoes just hours ago, when his biggest worry was whether the woman he loved had been hiding secrets from him. Now, as he sat in an FBI surveillance van watching Agent DeWitt coordinate the operation through her headset, those secrets seemed insignificant compared to keeping Sophia and Emma alive. Target acquired, came a voice through the radio. Black SUV, Warehouse 14. Multiple heat signatures inside. Tony's hands clenched into fists. Somewhere in that building, Sophia was being held by a man who'd already killed to protect his secrets. Somewhere else in the city, Emma was under FBI protection, probably terrified and confused about why her brother's girlfriend had brought danger into their lives. "Mr. Barzini," Agent DeWitt said, "in about 5 minutes, you're going to walk into that warehouse. You'll be wearing a wire, and we'll have sharpshooters positioned on all sides of the building. But if something goes wrong—" "Nothing's going wrong," Tony interrupted. "I'm getting her out of there." Agent DeWitt studied his face. "You really love her, don't you?" "More than my own life," Tony said without hesitation. "Agent DeWitt, I've spent 34 years building a business empire, accumulating wealth, surrounding myself with luxury. But Sophia is the only thing that's ever made me feel truly rich. Even knowing what she did, even knowing people died because of her choices." Tony was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the woman who volunteered at children's hospitals every weekend, who cried during sad movies, who'd held him while he grieved his parents. Then he thought about a 19-year-old girl, alone and desperate, manipulated by a predator into choices no one should have to make. "Agent DeWitt," Tony said finally, "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I've been ruthless in business, I've prioritized money over relationships, I've hurt people to get what I wanted. The difference is, I made those choices from a position of power and privilege. Sophia was a kid who'd been abandoned by everyone who was supposed to protect her. If I can forgive myself for the harm I've caused, how can I not forgive her?" Agent DeWitt's radio crackled. "Agent DeWitt, we have a problem. Second vehicle approaching from the east. Looks like Dawson called in backup." "How many?" Agent DeWitt responded. "At least 4 more men, heavily armed." Tony's phone buzzed. Another message. "Come alone, Mr. Barzini. Any sign of law enforcement, and both women die." Agent DeWitt saw the message and cursed. "He knows we're here." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Tony said quietly. "What do you mean? What if Jack Dawson isn't the one who's been sending me messages?" Agent DeWitt stared at him. "Explain. Think about it. The first messages demanded $50 million. Now suddenly he doesn't want money, he wants Sophia dead. That's a pretty dramatic change in motivation." Tony pulled out his phone, scrolling through the messages. "And look at the language. The early messages were calculating, businesslike. These new ones are emotional, desperate. You think someone else has been blackmailing you? I think someone else wanted to flush Sophia out into the open, and they used me to do it." Tony's mind was racing. "Agent DeWitt, what if Jack Dawson isn't the only one who wants Sophia dead? What if someone else has been pulling the strings this entire time?" Before Agent DeWitt could respond, Tony's phone rang. Not a call from an unknown number this time. A call from Victor Laszlo, the man who'd approached him at the warehouse the night before. "Mr. Barzini," Victor's voice was smooth, controlled. "I trust you're enjoying the evening's entertainment." "Victor." Tony looked at Agent DeWitt, who was frantically signaling her team to start tracing the call. "Where's Sophia? Your girlfriend is safe for now. But that situation could change very quickly depending on your next choices." "What do you want?" "I want justice, Mr. Barzini. Justice for the 3 men who died in that warehouse, justice for the children who suffered because their medicine was stolen, and justice for the families who've been waiting 3 years for answers." Agent DeWitt was writing notes rapidly, passing them to Tony. Asterisk, keep him talking. "We're tracing the call, asterisk. If you want justice, turn yourself in," Tony said. "Let the FBI handle this." Victor laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "The FBI? Mr. Barzini, do you know how I've managed to stay 1 step ahead of federal investigators for 3 years?" Tony felt cold dread spreading through his chest. "How?" "Because I am a federal investigator. Special Agent Victor Laszlo, Financial Crimes Task Force. I've been hunting Jack Dawson for 5 years, and your girlfriend has been my only real lead." Agent DeWitt went white, checking something on her computer. She showed Tony the screen. Victor Laszlo's official FBI personnel file, complete with photo and credentials. "Then why all the deception?" Tony asked. "Why not work with Agent DeWitt's team?" "Because Agent DeWitt's team doesn't understand what's really at stake here. They think this is about stolen medical supplies and warehouse fires. They don't know about the biological weapons research that Jack Dawson has been selling to foreign governments." The van went silent except for the static from the radio communications. Agent DeWitt was staring at her computer screen, her face pale with shock. "Mr. Barzini," Victor continued, 3 years ago, Jack Dawson didn't just steal medicine from children's hospitals. He stole experimental antidotes and vaccines that were being developed for the Department of Defense. In the wrong hands, that research could be reverse engineered to create biological weapons capable of killing millions of people. And Sophia knew about this? Sarah Chun was Jack Dawson's computer specialist. She accessed every file, every database, every piece of research in his operation. Whether she understood what she was looking at or not, she has information in her head that could destabilize global security. Tony felt the world spinning around him. So you've been hunting her to get that information. I've been hunting her to keep that information from falling into the wrong hands. Mr. Barzini, there are foreign agents who would pay hundreds of millions of dollars for what Sarah Chun knows. That's why Jack Dawson is back, not to kill her, but to sell her. Agent DeWitt grabbed the phone from Tony. Agent Laszlo, this is Agent Rose DeWitt, Federal Task Force. Why wasn't I briefed on the biological weapons component of this case? Because your security clearance isn't high enough, Agent DeWitt. This operation is classified at levels that don't officially exist. Then why are you telling us now? Because in approximately 10 minutes, Jack Dawson is going to deliver Sarah Chun to a team of foreign operatives who will extract every piece of information from her brain and then kill her. And unless we work together, there's nothing any of us can do to stop it. Tony grabbed the phone back. Where is she? Where's the exchange happening? Warehouse 14, just like the message said. But Mr. Barzini, it's not Jack Dawson in that building. He sold Sarah to the highest bidder an hour ago and disappeared again. The people holding her now are professionals, torturers and killers who won't hesitate to murder everyone in a 6-block radius if they feel threatened. Agent DeWitt was coordinating with her team, her voice urgent. All units, we have new intelligence. Suspects are foreign operatives, possibly armed with biological weapons. Extreme caution advised. What about Emma? Tony asked Victor. Your sister is safe. That threat was just to ensure your compliance. Victor's voice softened slightly. Mr. Barzini, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand. Sarah Chun is going to die tonight unless we save her. And if the information in her head falls into enemy hands, a lot of other innocent people are going to die too. Tony looked out the van's window at the warehouse where Sophia was being held. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been quarterly profit reports and which charity gala to attend. Now he was sitting in an FBI surveillance van, learning that the woman he loved possessed information that could be used to create biological weapons. What do you need me to do? Tony asked. Exactly what we planned, Victor said. Go into that building and convince them you're there to pay ransom for Sarah's release. But Tony, and I hope you don't mind me calling you Tony, when the shooting starts, and it will start, I need you to get Sarah out of that building alive. How do I do that? Trust the woman you love, Victor said simply. Sarah Chun survived 3 years on the run from some very dangerous people. She's not the helpless victim she appears to be. The call ended, leaving Tony staring at Agent DeWitt, who was checking her weapon and preparing for what they all knew would be a very dangerous operation. Agent DeWitt, Tony said, there's something else I need to tell you about Sophia. Something that might change how this goes down. What? Tony thought about all the times he'd watched Sophia at her computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard with expertise that seemed far beyond what someone would learn from simple data entry work. He thought about her uncanny ability to understand complex financial systems, her knowledge of international banking regulations, her casual familiarity with encryption software. I don't think she was just Jack Dawson's victim, Tony said quietly. I think she was his partner. And I think she's been playing a much deeper game than any of us realized. Agent DeWitt stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying that the woman in that warehouse might be our best chance of bringing down Jack Dawson's entire operation. But only if she's willing to trust us enough to reveal who she really is. Tony's phone buzzed one final time. A message from Sophia. Tony, if you're reading this, it means the people who took me haven't found my emergency phone yet. I need you to know that I love you, and everything I did, everything I'm about to do, is to protect you and Emma. Don't trust anyone who claims to be helping us. This goes much deeper than stolen medicine. I'm sorry I lied about who I was, but I'm about to show you who I really am. Sarah Chun died in that warehouse fire 3 years ago, but she taught Sophia Corleone everything she knew about surviving in a world where trust can get you killed. See you soon. S. Tony showed the message to Agent DeWitt, who read it twice before looking up at him with something approaching respect. Mr. Barzini, Agent DeWitt said, I think we've been underestimating your girlfriend. I think we all have, Tony replied, checking his watch. And we're about to find out just how much. Outside the van, Warehouse 14 loomed in the darkness, holding secrets that could save or destroy them all. In less than 5 minutes, Tony would walk into that building to face the truth about the woman he loved, and discover whether their love was strong enough to survive the revelation of who she really was. Warehouse 14 was a tomb of rusted steel and broken glass, its shadows thick enough to hide an army. Tony approached the entrance alone, his heart hammering against his ribs as he clutched the briefcase that was supposed to contain $50 million in bearer bonds. Actually FBI tracking devices and blank paper, but convincing enough from a distance. The massive door stood ajar, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. Tony's earpiece crackled with Agent DeWitt's voice. Remember, we need you to get eyes on the hostiles before we move. Keep them talking as long as possible. Tony stepped into the warehouse and immediately knew something was wrong. The space was too quiet, too empty. Where he'd expected to find armed guards and sophisticated equipment, there was only silence and the smell of old smoke that still lingered from the fire 3 years ago. Hello, Mr. Barzini. The voice came from above. Tony looked up to see a woman standing on a metal catwalk 20 feet overhead. Asian features, short black hair, wearing tactical gear, and holding what looked like a very expensive sniper rifle. She wasn't pointing it at him, but the threat was unmistakable. Where's Sophia? Tony called out. Sophia Corleone doesn't exist, the woman replied. She never did. But Sarah Chun, now that's a much more interesting conversation. More figures emerged from the shadows. At least 6 armed operatives positioned throughout the warehouse, all of them with the controlled movements of professional killers. Tony realized with growing horror that he'd walked into a trap far more sophisticated than anyone had anticipated. You're not here for ransom, Tony said, understanding flooding through him. Very good, Mr. Barzini. We're here for something much more valuable than money. The woman on the catwalk gestured, and 2 of her operatives dragged a figure from behind a stack of shipping containers. Sophia. But when Tony saw her, his breath caught in his throat. Gone was the terrified, vulnerable woman he'd expected to find. Instead, Sophia stood straight and defiant, her amber eyes blazing with an intensity he'd never seen before. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but she wasn't cowering. She was calculating. Hello, Tony, Sophia called out, her voice steady despite her circumstances. I'm sorry you have to see this. Sophia, are you hurt? No, she replied, and something in her tone made Tony look more carefully. She was standing in a very specific position, her hands positioned in a way that looked casual but wasn't. Her eyes kept flicking to different points around the warehouse, as if she was mapping escape routes or something else. Mr. Barzini, the woman on the catwalk continued, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Lin Wu, and I represent certain interests that have been very eager to meet Sarah Chin. You see, your girlfriend possesses something extraordinarily valuable, information that could shift the balance of power between nations. I don't know anything about biological weapons, Sophia said firmly. I was just a computer operator. Lin Wu laughed. Sarah, you always were too modest. Tell Mr. Barzini about the Gibraltar files. Tony saw Sophia's face change, a flicker of something, fear? Anger? Crossing her features before she controlled her expression. I don't know what you're talking about, Sophia said. The Gibraltar files, Lin Wu repeated, are the complete research data for Project Chimera, the Department of Defense's most classified biological defense program. Vaccines for engineered pathogens, antidotes for biological weapons that don't officially exist, genetic sequences that could be used to create targeted bioweapons. Tony felt sick. Sophia didn't have access to anything like that. Oh, but she did. You see, Mr. Barzini, Jack Dawson wasn't just stealing medical supplies to sell on the black market. He was a contractor for a shadow organization that infiltrated the Defense Department's research programs. Sarah wasn't his victim. She was his partner in the most sophisticated data theft in American history. Sophia's eyes met Tony's across the warehouse floor. In them, he saw an apology, a confession, and something else, a warning. The Gibraltar files are encrypted and stored in Sarah's memory, Lin Wu continued. Not on any computer or drive that could be stolen or hacked. Jack Dawson had her memorize terabytes of data using advanced mnemonic techniques. She is literally a human hard drive containing information worth billions of dollars. Tony's earpiece crackled. Tony, we're in position, but there are more hostiles than expected. We count at least 12 armed operatives, and they have superior positioning. We need you to get Sophia away from the main group before we can move. But as Tony listened to Lin Wu's revelation, he realized that everything he thought he knew about the situation was wrong. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a negotiation for state secrets. And Sophia wasn't just a victim or even an accomplice. She was the prize. What do you want? Tony asked. We want Sarah to download the Gibraltar files into our systems. In exchange, we'll let both of you live. And if she refuses? Lin Wu's smile was cold. Then we extract the information using less pleasant methods, and you both die anyway. Sophia spoke up from below. Tony, there's something you need to know about the Gibraltar files. Sarah, don't, Lin Wu warned. They're not weapons research, Sophia continued, her voice carrying clearly through the warehouse. They're medical research. Cures for genetic diseases, treatments for cancer, vaccines for illnesses that kill millions of children in developing countries every year. Tony stared at her, understanding beginning to dawn. The shadow organization that Lin Wu works for wants to steal those cures and sell them to the highest bidder, Sophia explained. Children will die in poverty while the rich live forever. That's what this is really about. Lin Wu raised her rifle. Enough talk. Sarah, you have 30 seconds to cooperate, or Mr. Barzini dies first. Tony's earpiece exploded with chatter. Multiple targets moving to firing positions. Tony, get down now. But before Tony could move, the warehouse lights suddenly blazed to life, flooding the space with brilliant illumination. Sophia had somehow triggered the building's emergency lighting system, and in the sudden glare, Tony saw something that changed everything. Sophia wasn't a prisoner. The ropes around her hands were cut, not tied. The operatives who'd been guarding her were actually positioned to protect her from crossfire. And when she looked up at Lin Wu on the catwalk, there was no fear in her eyes, there was command. Lin, you always did talk too much, Sophia said, her voice completely different now, confident, authoritative, deadly. Lin Wu's face twisted with rage. You lying bitch. You've been playing us this entire time. Of course I have, Sophia replied. Did you really think Jack Dawson was smart enough to infiltrate the Defense Department on his own? Did you think a 19-year-old foster kid could memorize classified research without extensive training? Tony felt the ground shifting beneath him as he realized the truth. Sophia, Sarah, whoever she really was, had been running the entire operation from the beginning. Tony, Sophia called out, I need you to get behind the shipping container to your left. Right now. Sophia, what? Do it. The command in her voice was so absolute that Tony dove for cover, just as automatic gunfire erupted throughout the warehouse. But the shooting wasn't random. It was precise, coordinated, and it was coming from positions Tony hadn't even noticed. FBI agents were rappelling through skylights, emerging from hidden positions, moving with military precision through the warehouse. But they weren't alone. Other figures in tactical gear were engaging Lin Wu's operatives, and Tony realized that this had been a coordinated operation all along. Agent Chen, status report. A voice called out over the gunfire. Agent Chen. Not Sarah Chen the criminal, not Sophia Corleone the victim. Agent Chen. Tony's earpiece had gone dead, but he could hear Agent DeWitt's voice shouting orders from somewhere in the chaos. Lin Wu was firing from the catwalk, her operatives falling back toward predetermined escape routes. And in the middle of it all, Sophia was moving like a trained operator, coordinating the assault with hand signals and tactical precision. The gunfight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it ended, Lin Wu lay dead on the catwalk. Her operatives were either dead or in custody, and Tony was crouched behind a shipping container, staring at the woman he'd thought he knew. Sophia, Agent Chen, approached him slowly, her hands visible, her expression careful. Tony, she said quietly, I can explain everything. Can you? Tony stood up slowly, his mind reeling. Because I'm starting to think I don't know anything about you. Not your name, not your past, not even whether anything you've ever said to me was true. Sophia's face crumpled slightly. Everything I said about loving you was true. That's the only thing that matters. Is it? Tony felt anger building in his chest, not just at her lies but at his own blindness. Are you even really Emma's friend, or was that part of some deep cover operation too? Before Sophia could answer, Agent DeWitt approached them, flanked by Victor Laszlo and several other federal agents. Her expression was grim. Agent Chen, Agent DeWitt said formally, I need you to debrief with command immediately. This operation exposed more enemy operatives than we anticipated. Agent DeWitt, Sophia replied, her voice professional. I need 5 minutes with Mr. Barzini first. That's not protocol. Rose, Victor Laszlo interrupted. Give them the time. Agent Chin has been undercover for 3 years. She's earned 5 minutes. Agent DeWitt reluctantly withdrew, leaving Tony and Sophia alone among the wreckage of the warehouse where their relationship had begun to die. My real name is Sarah Chin, Sophia said quietly. That much was always true. But I'm not a criminal, Tony. I'm a federal agent. I've been undercover since I was 22 years old. The warehouse fire was real. 3 security guards really died, and it really was my fault. Sophia's voice broke slightly. I was supposed to extract data from Jack Dawson's operation and get out before anyone got hurt. But he was more paranoid than we expected, and when the FBI moved too early, he decided to burn everything down rather than get caught. Tony stared at her, trying to process the revelation. So you've been lying to me for 6 months. I've been lying to everyone for 3 years, Tony. It was the only way to stay alive and complete my mission. Sophia stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. But falling in love with you wasn't part of the plan. That was real, Tony. That was the most real thing I've done in 3 years. How can I believe anything you say? Tony asked, his voice hollow. How can I trust someone whose entire life is built on lies? Because, Sophia said simply, I just risked everything to save you. I blew my cover, ended my mission, and compromised a 3-year investigation because I couldn't let you get hurt. Tony looked around the warehouse, at the FBI agents cleaning up the scene, at the body bags being wheeled out. What happens now? Now I go into protective custody while the Bureau decides whether to prosecute me for the deaths of those security guards or give me a medal for exposing the largest biological weapons trafficking ring in history. Sophia's laugh was bitter. Either way, Sarah Chin disappears forever. And Sophia Corleone was never real to begin with, Tony finished. They stood in silence, 2 people who'd found love in the middle of deception, now facing the reality that their relationship had been built on foundations that no longer existed. Tony, Sophia said softly, I know I have no right to ask this. But when this is all over, when the trials are finished and the investigations are closed, would you consider letting me try to show you who I really am? Not Agent Chin, not Sophia Corleone, but just Sarah, the woman who fell in love with you despite every professional instinct telling her not to. Tony looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the criminal he'd feared or the agent she'd revealed herself to be, but the woman who'd held him while he grieved, who'd made him laugh, who'd made him believe in love again. I don't know, Tony said honestly. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can build a life with someone whose job requires them to lie for a living. Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. But, Tony continued, I know I love you. Whatever your name is, whatever you've done, whatever happens next, I love you. And that's going to have to be enough to start with. Agent DeWitt approached them again, her expression urgent. Agent Chin, we need to move now. There are other enemy operatives in the city, and your cover is completely blown. As federal agents surrounded them, preparing to take Sophia into protective custody, she looked at Tony one last time. Tony, she said, take care of Emma. And remember that everything I told you about wanting a simple life was true. When this is over, if you'll have me, I want to try being just Sarah Chin, no covers, no lies, no secrets. Just a woman who loves you more than her own life. And then she was gone, surrounded by federal agents and disappearing into the night, leaving Tony alone with the wreckage of everything he'd thought he knew about love, trust, and the woman who'd changed his life forever. 3 weeks after the warehouse operation, Tony sat in his Beverly Hills office, staring at a stack of newspapers whose headlines all told variations of the same story. Billionaire's girlfriend revealed as federal agent. Love and espionage. The Sarah Chin story. From foster care to federal agent. The woman who brought down international arms dealers. Every article painted Sophia, Sarah, as either a hero or a traitor, depending on the publication's political leanings. None of them captured the complexity of loving someone whose entire identity had been a carefully constructed lie. Emma knocked on his door, entering with 2 cups of coffee and the cautious expression she'd worn since learning that her best friend of 8 years had been a federal agent the entire time. How are you holding up? Emma asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. I've been better, Tony admitted. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Did you ever suspect? About Sophia, I mean. Did anything ever seem off? Emma was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. There were little things, she said finally. She was too good at certain things, computers, languages, reading people. And she never talked about her childhood in any specific detail. But Tony, I just thought she was private about a painful past. The friendship you had with her, was any of it real? Emma's eyes filled with tears. That's the question I've been asking myself every day since this happened. And you know what? Yes, I think it was real. Because the woman who held me when I cried about mom and dad, who celebrated with me when I got my promotion, who listened to me complain about dating for hours on end, that person couldn't have been completely fake. Tony's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Barzini, this is Agent Victor Laszlo. Agent Chin would like to see you. If you're interested, meet me at the Federal Building downtown in 1 hour. Emma saw him reading the message. That's about Sarah, isn't it? She wants to see me. Are you going to go? Tony stared at the message, torn between his love for Sarah and his anger at her deception. I don't know. Em, how do you rebuild trust with someone whose job it is to lie? Maybe, Emma said carefully. You start by remembering why you fell in love with them in the first place. And then you figure out if that person was real, even if everything else was fake. An hour later, Tony found himself in a sterile Federal Building conference room, facing Agent Laszlo across a metal table. Through a one-way mirror, he could see another room where Sarah sat alone, wearing an orange jumpsuit and looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. How is she? Tony asked. Physically unharmed. Emotionally, Agent Laszlo shrugged. She's been in protective custody for 3 weeks, debriefed 18 hours a day, with no contact with the outside world. She's holding up better than most would. What's going to happen to her? That depends partly on you, Mr. Barzini. Tony frowned. What do you mean? Agent Laszlo pulled out a thick folder. The Justice Department is deciding whether to prosecute Agent Chin for the deaths of those security guards or to recommend her for commendation for her work infiltrating the weapons trafficking ring. The decision may come down to character witnesses and testimony about her motivations. You want me to testify on her behalf. I want you to tell the truth about the woman you know. But first, I think you should hear the whole story. Agent Laszlo opened the folder. Mr. Barzini, what do you know about Sarah Chen's childhood? She said her parents died when she was young, that she was in foster care. Her parents were both research scientists working for the Defense Department on classified medical projects. They were killed in what was staged to look like a car accident when Sarah was 16. Killed because they discovered that their research was being stolen and sold to foreign governments. Tony felt cold dread settling in his stomach. Murdered by the same organization that Lin Wu worked for. Sarah didn't go into foster care, Mr. Barzini. She went into witness protection. And when she turned 18, she volunteered to go undercover to find her parents' killers. The revelation hit Tony like a physical blow. She's been hunting the people who murdered her family. For 8 years. She joined the FBI, trained in deep cover operations, and allowed herself to be recruited by Jack Dawson's organization, all to get close enough to identify the people responsible for her parents' deaths. Agent Laszlo pulled out another document. The biological weapons research that was stolen? It included her parents' work on genetic therapies for childhood cancers. Sarah has spent 8 years of her life trying to recover medical treatments that could save thousands of children. Treatments that are currently being sold to the highest bidder by arms dealers. Tony stared through the one-way mirror at Sarah, understanding flooding through him. Her work at children's hospitals wasn't guilt over stolen medicine. It was her way of honoring her parents' memory while hunting their killers. The warehouse fire, Tony said quietly, was supposed to be controlled. Sarah had arranged for the security guards to be called away on false emergencies. But Jack Dawson panicked when he realized the FBI was closing in, and he moved up the timeline. 3 men died because Sarah trusted someone who betrayed her. Exactly what happened with Lin Wu 3 weeks ago. Why are you telling me this? Because Agent Chen has requested permission to resign from the FBI and disappear into civilian life. She says she's tired of living lies, tired of the violence, tired of sacrificing personal happiness for a mission that's consumed her entire adult life. Tony looked through the mirror again, seeing Sarah in a completely different light. Not the victim or the criminal or even the agent, but a woman who'd spent 8 years seeking justice for her murdered parents while trying to save other families from the same fate. What do you think I should do? Tony asked. Agent Laszlo smiled slightly. Mr. Barzini, That's not my decision to make. But I will say this. In 8 years of undercover work, Agent Chen never broke character, never compromised a mission, never put her personal feelings ahead of her duty. Until she met you. What do you mean? She was supposed to maintain her cover until we could arrest the entire network. Instead, she blew her identity to save your life, compromising years of work and putting herself at enormous personal risk. Agent Laszlo stood up. Whatever else you believe about Agent Chen, believe that her love for you is the most genuine thing she's done in 8 years. Agent Laszlo left Tony alone with his thoughts and the view of Sarah through the one-way mirror. She was sitting perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, but Tony could see the exhaustion in her posture, the weight of carrying secrets for so many years. His phone buzzed with a message from Emma. Tony, I've been thinking about what you asked me. Sarah taught me how to stand up for myself when I was too scared to ask for a promotion. She held my hair when I was sick, brought me soup when I was alone, and never once made me feel like my problems were too small to matter. That person couldn't have been fake. Whatever her real name is, whatever her job was, she was my friend. And friends don't give up on each other. Tony stared at the message, then at Sarah through the glass, and made his decision. He knocked on the conference room door, and Agent Laszlo returned. I want to see her, Tony said. I want to hear the truth from her, all of it, no matter how painful it is. Agent Laszlo nodded. Mr. Barzini, before you go in there, you should know. She's expecting you to tell her goodbye. She's prepared for you to walk away and never see her again. Then I guess I'm about to surprise her, Tony said. Because somewhere between learning about her parents' murder and seeing her exhaustion through the glass, Tony had realized something important. He'd fallen in love with Sarah Chen, not with her cover identity. And if he was going to lose her, it wouldn't be because he was too afraid to fight for the woman who'd risked everything to save him. The secure room where Sarah was being held looked more like a corporate conference room than a prison cell. Polished table, comfortable chairs, windows that showed the downtown skyline. But Tony could see the cameras in the corners, the reinforced glass, the subtle signs that this was still a place of confinement. Sarah looked up when he entered, surprise and hope and fear warring in her amber eyes. She was still wearing the orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup to hide behind. She looked younger than her 28 years, and heartbreakingly vulnerable. Tony, she said softly, standing as he approached. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, Tony admitted, taking the seat across from her. Sarah, that is your real name, right? It's the name my parents gave me, she replied. It's the name I want to keep for the rest of my life, whatever that looks like. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Tony studied her face, looking for signs of deception, manipulation, anything that would tell him this was just another performance. Instead, he saw exhaustion, grief, and a kind of raw honesty he'd never seen before. Agent Laszlo told me about your parents, Tony said quietly. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Did he tell you how they died? How I found them? No. Sarah took a shaky breath. I came home from school to find them in our living room, staged to look like they'd been killed in a home invasion. But I knew it wasn't random violence. My mother's research files were missing, and her computer had been wiped. Someone had been in the house for hours, methodically searching for something specific. Tony felt his heart breaking as he watched her relive the memory. I was supposed to die that night too, Sarah continued. I was supposed to be home hours earlier, but I'd stayed late at school working on a science project. If I'd come home on time, you'd be dead too, and your parents' killers would never have been caught. Maybe. Or maybe 3 security guards would still be alive because I wouldn't have been there to make mistakes that got them killed. Tony reached across the table and took her hands. They were cold, trembling slightly, and when she looked up at him, he saw the guilt and grief she'd been carrying for 8 years. Sarah, Tony said gently, you were 18 years old when you decided to hunt international arms dealers. Most people that age are worried about college and dating and figuring out what to major in. You chose to sacrifice your entire youth to seek justice for murdered parents and recover medical research that could save children's lives. I chose revenge, Sarah said bitterly. I told myself it was about justice, but really I just wanted the people who killed my family to pay. And did you get your revenge? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Linwu was there the night my parents died. She was the one who pulled the trigger while her partner searched the house. When I saw her die in that warehouse, I thought I'd feel satisfied, vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. Because revenge doesn't bring people back. Because revenge doesn't heal anything. It just perpetuates the cycle. Sarah looked at Tony with eyes full of unshed tears. Tony, I've spent 8 years becoming someone I barely recognize. I've lied, stolen, manipulated people, lived false identities, and convinced myself it was all for a greater good. But the truth is, I became the kind of person my parents would have been ashamed of. Your parents were scientists who dedicated their lives to helping sick children. You've spent 8 years trying to recover their research so it could be used the way they intended. How is that something to be ashamed of? Because I fell in love with you while lying about everything I was. Because I dragged you into danger without your consent. Because I put Emma at risk by using our friendship as cover for my mission. Sarah's voice broke completely. Tony, you deserve better than someone whose entire life is built on deception. Tony stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. Below them, Los Angeles sprawled toward the horizon. Millions of people living their lives, loving their families, building futures based on trust and honesty. Things that felt impossibly complicated from inside a federal holding facility. Sarah, Tony said without turning around, do you remember the night we met? Really met, I mean not when Emma introduced us, but the night we stayed up until sunrise talking. Of course. You told me about a dream you had, to open a foundation that would provide medical care to underserved children. You said you wanted to use technology to connect rural hospitals with specialist doctors, to make sure no child died because their parents couldn't afford treatment. Tony turned to face her. Was that a lie too? No, Sarah whispered. That was the first time I'd talked about what I wanted to do after the mission was over. I'd never let myself imagine a future beyond hunting my parents' killers. You talked about it because you were starting to believe you could have a different kind of life. A life with me. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I started to hope for things I'd never thought I could have, a home, a family, someone who knew me and loved me anyway. Tony sat back down, reaching for her hands again. Sarah, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm furious that you deceived me. I'm hurt that you put me in danger without telling me. I'm scared that I fell in love with someone whose entire profession is built on lies and deception. Sarah's face crumpled. I understand. I'll sign whatever papers you need me to sign, and I'll disappear. You'll never have to see me again. I'm not finished, Tony said firmly. I'm also incredibly proud of you for sacrificing your own happiness to seek justice for innocent people. I'm amazed by your courage in facing down international criminals with nothing but your intelligence and determination. And I'm humbled by the fact that you risked everything, your mission, your safety, your freedom, to save my life. Sarah stared at him, hope and disbelief warring in her eyes. Most of all, Tony continued, I'm still completely in love with you. Not with Sophia Corleone, who never really existed. Not with Agent Chun, who was a performance. But with Sarah, the woman who cried during sad movies, who spent her weekends reading to sick children, who held me when I grieved my parents and made me believe in love again. Tony, I don't know how to be just Sarah, she whispered. I've been playing roles for so long, I'm not sure I remember who I really am. Then let's figure it out together. Tony pulled out a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, setting it on the table between them. Sarah Chun, I know this is insane. I know we have a lot to work through, a lot of trust to rebuild. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life helping you remember who you are when you're not saving the world. Sarah stared at the ring box, her hands trembling. Tony, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. The question is whether you're brave enough to try being happy instead of just being right. Before Sarah could respond, the conference room door burst open. Agent Laszlo entered, followed by Agent DeWitt and several other federal agents, their faces grim with urgency. Agent Chun, Agent Laszlo said, we have a problem. Jack Dawson has been found dead in Costa Rica, killed execution-style 12 hours ago. But before he died, he transmitted something to an unknown recipient, the complete Gibraltar files. Sarah went pale. That's impossible. The files were encrypted using quantum algorithms. It would take decades to break the encryption. Unless someone had the encryption key, Agent DeWitt said. Agent Chun, is there any way Dawson could have obtained your personal encryption keys? Sarah's face went white with horror. My laptop. The one I used for personal things, not bureau business. It was in my apartment when I was arrested. If someone accessed it. Your apartment was compromised 6 hours ago, Agent Laszlo confirmed. Professional job, no signs of forced entry. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Tony felt the room spinning around him as he realized what this meant. The Gibraltar files, the medical research, are now in the hands of the highest bidder, Agent DeWitt finished grimly. Agent Chin, we need you to help us track down who has them before they're sold on the international black market. I can't, Sarah said quietly. I'm resigning from the bureau, remember? I'm done with this life. Sarah, Tony said urgently, if those files contain cures for children's diseases, then they'll be sold to pharmaceutical companies who will price them out of reach for anyone who actually needs them, Sarah finished bitterly. Just like my parents feared would happen. Agent Laszlo leaned forward. Agent Chin, there's something else. We've identified the buyer. It's a consortium of private medical research companies backed by offshore investment groups. They're planning to auction the research to the highest bidder at a private event tomorrow night in Las Vegas. An auction, Sarah said slowly, her mind clearly racing. A very exclusive auction, Agent DeWitt added. Invitation only, highest security, no law enforcement able to get close without blowing months of surveillance work. Tony saw something change in Sarah's expression. The same calculating look he'd seen in the warehouse when she'd been coordinating the tactical operation. But they don't know what Agent Sarah Chin looks like, Sarah said quietly. They only know Sophia Corleone, the billionaire's girlfriend. Agent Laszlo smiled grimly. Agent Chin, what are you thinking? Sarah looked at Tony, then at the ring box still sitting on the table between them. I'm thinking that Tony and I need to have a very public engagement announcement. And then we need to get ourselves invited to a medical research auction in Las Vegas. Absolutely not, Tony said immediately. Sarah, you just got out of a life-or-death situation. I'm not letting you walk into another one. Tony, this isn't your choice to make, Sarah said firmly. Those files contain my parents' research they died to protect. I'm not going to let it be sold to the highest bidder while children die from treatable diseases. Then I'm going with you. This isn't a game, Tony. These people will kill us if they discover who I really am. Then we'll have to make sure they don't discover it. Tony picked up the ring box and opened it, revealing a diamond that caught the fluorescent light and threw rainbows across the conference room wall. Sarah Chin, will you marry me and help me crash a black market auction in Las Vegas? Sarah stared at him, then at the ring, then at the federal agents watching their conversation with professional fascination. You realize, Sarah said slowly, that if we do this, there's no going back. No more lies, no more deception, no more separate identities. If we survive this mission, we're going to have to figure out how to build a real life together. I'm counting on it, Tony replied. Sarah reached for the ring, her hand steady despite the magnitude of what they were planning. Then yes, Tony Barzini, I'll marry you. But first, we're going to steal my parents' research back from international criminals and make sure it gets used to save children's lives instead of making billionaires richer. As Tony slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger, Agent Laszlo began outlining the mission parameters. Outside the windows, Las Vegas beckoned, a city built on risk, deception, and the belief that sometimes you had to bet everything to win anything. In 18 hours, Tony and Sarah would walk into the most dangerous situation of their lives, posing as an engaged couple shopping for black market medical research. If they succeeded, they'd recover information that could save thousands of lives. If they failed, they'd both die, and the Gibraltar files would disappear into the international arms market forever. But for the first time since she was 18 years old, Sarah Chin was going into a mission not for revenge or duty or guilt, but for love for the parents who'd raised her, love for the children who needed the research they'd died protecting, and love for the man who'd chosen to stand beside her when he could have walked away. It was the most dangerous mission of her career, and the first one that felt like it was worth the risk. 6 months later, the grand ballroom of the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas had been transformed for what the invitation called a private medical research symposium. In reality, it was the most exclusive black market auction in the world, where stolen research, experimental drugs, and classified medical data changed hands for hundreds of millions of dollars. Tony adjusted his tuxedo and scanned the crowd of well-dressed criminals masquerading as philanthropists and researchers. Somewhere in this room was the buyer who'd purchased the Gibraltar files, his late future in-law's life work on genetic therapies for childhood cancer. You look nervous, Sarah murmured beside him, radiant in a silver evening gown that cost more than most people's cars. Her engagement ring caught the crystal chandelier light, drawing appreciative glances from other guests. To everyone else, they were Tony Barzini, billionaire tech mogul, and his fiancée Sophia Corleone, making their first foray into alternative medical investments. "I am nervous," Tony admitted quietly. "6 months ago, the most dangerous thing in my life was a hostile corporate takeover. Now I'm about to bid on stolen biological weapons research while surrounded by international criminals." Sarah smiled, the same radiant expression she'd worn at their engagement party last month. An event that had been covered by every society magazine and gossip blog, cementing their cover as Los Angeles' newest power couple. "Tony," she said softly, "do you ever regret saying yes to this life?" Before Tony could answer, a woman in an elegant black dress approached them. Dr. Catherine Winters, the symposium's host and the person they'd spent months infiltrating to get close to. "Mr. Barzini, Ms. Corleone," Dr. Winters said warmly, "I'm so pleased you could join us tonight. I understand you're interested in expanding your foundation's research portfolio. My fiancé has convinced me that traditional pharmaceutical development is too slow," Sarah replied smoothly, her arm linked through Tony's. "We're interested in more innovative approaches to medical research." "Wonderful. Tonight's auction features some truly groundbreaking material." Dr. Winters gestured toward a display screen showing lot numbers and starting bids, including the crown jewel, genetic therapy research that could revolutionize cancer treatment. Tony's jaw tightened as he saw the listing. Lot 47, complete genetic therapy research files, including childhood cancer protocols. Starting bid, $200 million. His parents-in-law's life work, stolen and sold like a commodity. "That sounds exactly like what we're looking for," Tony said, his voice carefully neutral. As Dr. Winters moved on to other guests, Sarah squeezed Tony's arm. Through her earpiece, barely visible beneath her elaborate diamond earrings, Agent Laszlo's voice provided updates on the FBI team's position throughout the hotel. "All teams in position," Agent Laszlo reported. "Remember, we need positive identification of the current holder of the Gibraltar files before we move." "And Agent Chun." "I know," Sarah murmured, pretending to admire the auction catalog. "Stay in character, don't take unnecessary risks, wait for backup." "I've heard the lecture." What Agent Laszlo didn't know was that Sarah and Tony had spent the past 6 months becoming exactly who they'd pretended to be that night. Tony had restructured his foundation to focus entirely on medical research for underserved populations. Sarah had completed her FBI resignation and enrolled in medical school, determined to honor her parents' legacy by becoming a doctor herself. They weren't just pretending to be philanthropists anymore. They had become philanthropists, using Tony's wealth and Sarah's knowledge to fund legitimate research into the same diseases her parents had been working to cure. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Winters announced from the stage, "we'll begin tonight's auction with some of our more exclusive offerings." The auction proceeded through items that made Tony's stomach turn. Stolen vaccine research, experimental drug trials conducted without consent, genetic modification protocols that violated international law. Each item sold for tens of millions of dollars to buyers who would use the research to maximize profit rather than save lives. Finally, Dr. Winters announced Lot 47. This extraordinary collection represents 15 years of genetic therapy research, including breakthrough protocols for treating childhood leukemia, brain tumors, and rare genetic disorders. Dr. Winters read from her notes. "The research is complete and immediately applicable, with projected revenue potential in excess of $10 billion annually." Tony felt Sarah tense beside him as images of her parents' work flashed on the auction screens. Research they died to protect, now being sold to the highest bidder. "Bidding will start at $200 million, Dr. Winters announced. Hands went up around the room as pharmaceutical companies and private research firms bid on the right to control treatments for dying children. Tony watched the numbers climb. $250 million, $300 million, $350 million. $400 million, Tony called out, raising his bidding paddle. The room went quiet. At $400 million, Tony had just priced out most of the other bidders. $450 million, came a voice from the back of the room. Tony turned to see a man in an expensive suit, Dr. Heinrich Zimmer, CEO of a German pharmaceutical company known for pricing life-saving medications out of reach for all but the wealthiest patients. $500 million, Tony countered. Dr. Zimmer's smile was predatory. "Mr. Barzini, surely you understand that some research is too valuable to be wasted on charity work." $550 million, Dr. Zimmer bid. Sarah leaned close to Tony's ear. "The FBI is ready to move," she whispered. Agent Laszlo is asking if we've seen enough to identify the sellers. Not yet, Tony replied quietly. We need to know who actually has the files, not just who's trying to buy them. 600 million, Tony bid. The room was now completely silent except for Dr. Winter's voice. $600 million for lot 47. Do I hear 650 million? Dr. Zimmer hesitated, clearly reaching his limit. 600 million once, Dr. Winters called. 600 million twice. 700 million. The new voice came from a woman Tony hadn't noticed before, elegant, middle-aged, sitting alone at a corner table. When she stood to acknowledge her bid, Tony saw Agent Laszlo's face go pale in his peripheral vision. Agent Chin. Agent Laszlo's voice was urgent in their earpieces. That's Elena Petrov. Russian intelligence. If she gets those files. 800 million, Tony bid quickly. Elena Petrov smiled coldly. $1 billion. The room erupted in whispers. $1 billion would make Lot 47 the most expensive item ever sold at a black market auction. Mr. Barzini, Dr. Winters said, do you wish to continue bidding? Tony looked at Sarah, seeing his own determination reflected in her amber eyes. They'd come here not just to recover her parents' research, but to ensure it would be used to save children's lives instead of enriching criminals or foreign governments. Yes, Tony said, standing up. But I'd like to make a different kind of offer. Dr. Winters frowned. I'm not sure I understand. Instead of bidding against each other for the right to profit from stolen research, what if we returned the research to its rightful purpose? Tony's voice carried clearly through the ballroom. What if we used it to actually save children's lives? Elena Petrov laughed. Mr. Barzini, this is a business transaction, not a charity auction. You're right, Sarah said, standing beside Tony. This is a business transaction, and I'd like to propose a hostile takeover. Before anyone could respond, Sarah pressed a button on her phone. Immediately, the hotel's lighting changed, emergency exits locked, and FBI agents began streaming into the ballroom from every entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, Agent Laszlo announced over the hotel's PA system. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are all under arrest for conspiracy to traffic in stolen biological research. Chaos erupted as buyers and sellers tried to escape, but the FBI had spent months planning this operation. Every exit was blocked, every escape route covered. In the confusion, Elena Petrov drew a gun, pointing it directly at Sarah. You think you've won? Petrov snarled. The research files are encrypted and stored in servers across 3 continents. Even if you arrest everyone here, the information will still be sold. Actually, Sarah said calmly, the files were decrypted and downloaded 6 hours ago. Petrov's face went white. That's impossible. Not if you have the original encryption keys, Sarah smiled. The ones my parents created before they died. The ones I've been carrying in my memory for 8 years. Tony watched as FBI agents surrounded Petrov and the other criminals, finally seeing justice for the people who'd profited from stolen medical research. But more importantly, he saw Sarah's face as she realized that her parents' work would finally be used the way they'd intended, to save children's lives rather than enrich criminals. 3 years later, Dr. Sarah Chin-Barzini looked up from her medical school textbooks as Tony entered their new home office, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the satisfied smile he got whenever their foundation had made a breakthrough. Good news? Sarah asked, accepting her coffee gratefully. The best news, Tony replied, settling into the chair beside her desk. The first clinical trial using your parents' genetic therapy protocols just reported results. 23 children with terminal leukemia, Sarah. All 23 are now in complete remission. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she thought about her parents, who died believing their research would help save children. They would be so proud. They would be proud of you, Tony corrected. For choosing to become a doctor instead of staying in law enforcement. For dedicating your life to healing instead of hunting. For building something beautiful instead of just tearing down what was evil. Sarah reached for Tony's hand, her wedding ring. They'd married 6 months after the Las Vegas operation, catching the afternoon light streaming through their windows. Tony, she said softly, do you remember what you asked me in that federal holding facility? Whether I was brave enough to try being happy instead of just being right. I remember. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. For so many years, I thought happiness was selfish when there was so much injustice in the world. I thought I had to sacrifice my own life to make up for my mistakes. And now Now I think happiness might be the point. Not selfish happiness that ignores suffering, but the kind of happiness that comes from building something good with someone you love. Sarah gestured around their home office, where medical textbooks sat beside business plans for expanding their foundation. This life we've built, it's not perfect, but it's real. It's ours. Tony's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Family dinner tonight at 7. Sarah, Mom wants to know if you're bringing your famous lasagna. Yes, I'm calling her Mom now. Deal with it. Smiley face. Tony showed Sarah the message, both of them smiling. Emma had not only forgiven Sarah for the deception, but had become her closest friend in medical school. Tony's sister had a gift for seeing people's hearts rather than their histories. I should start cooking, Sarah said, closing her textbook. In a minute, Tony said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. This came today, from the Department of Justice. Sarah tensed slightly. Despite everything, she still worried that her past would somehow catch up with them. Good news or bad news? She asked. Read it yourself. Sarah opened the envelope and read the official letter inside. As she read, her expression changed from worry to confusion to amazement. They want to give me a medal, she said softly. The Presidential Medal of Freedom. For extraordinary service in protecting national security and advancing medical research for the benefit of humanity. You saved thousands of lives, Sarah. You recovered research that's already being used to treat childhood cancer, genetic disorders, and rare diseases. You deserve recognition. Sarah stared at the letter, thinking about the 18-year-old girl who'd decided to hunt her parents' killers, the federal agent who'd spent years living lies, and the woman she'd become through love and choice and the courage to build something better. Tony, she said finally, I don't want the medal. Why not? Because the real reward isn't recognition. It's this. Sarah gestured between them, around their home, toward the future they were building together. It's getting to spend the rest of my life saving children instead of hunting criminals. It's getting to use my parents' research the way they intended. It's getting to love you without lies or deception or the fear that my past will destroy our future. Tony pulled Sarah close, kissing her with the tenderness of a man who'd found his home in another person's heart. Sarah Barzini, he murmured against her lips. You are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you choose to be every single day. Outside their window, Los Angeles stretched toward the ocean, full of people living ordinary lives, loving their families, building dreams one day at a time. It was a simple life, a normal life, and after years of deception and danger and sacrifice, it was exactly what Sarah had always wanted. That evening, as they sat around Emma's dinner table with Tony's sister and her new boyfriend, Sarah thought about the warehouse fire that had started this journey. 3 security guards had died because of choices she'd made, and she would carry that grief for the rest of her life. But she'd also helped save thousands of children through the research she'd recovered and the foundation she and Tony had built. It didn't balance the scales. Nothing could bring those men back. But it was something. It was a life built on healing instead of harm, on love instead of revenge, on hope instead of guilt. Sarah, Emma said as they cleared the dinner dishes, I have something to tell you. What? Emma grinned. I applied to medical school. I want to join the foundation when I graduate. You and Tony are going to need help running all those clinics you're planning to build. Sarah hugged Emma tightly, thinking about the family she'd gained through love rather than blood, through choice rather than circumstance. She thought about the children who would grow up healthy because of research that had once been stolen and was now being used to save lives. Most of all, she thought about Tony, the man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to build a future with her anyway, the man who'd turned his wealth into a force for healing, the man who'd taught her that love wasn't about perfect people finding each other, but about imperfect people choosing to become better together. Emma, Sarah said, still holding her sister-in-law close, I think Mom and Dad would be proud of all of us. And in the warm light of Emma's kitchen, surrounded by the family she'd chosen and been chosen by, Dr. Sarah Barzini finally understood what her parents had been trying to teach her all along. That the best way to honor the dead was to live fully, to love completely, and to use whatever gifts you'd been given to make the world a little better than you found it. It was a simple truth, but it had taken her 15 years and a billionaire's love to learn it. Some lessons, she thought as Tony took her hand and led her toward their car and their life together, were worth the wait. What a journey this has been. From a warehouse fire that killed 3 people to a love story that saved thousands of lives, Sarah and Tony's story shows us that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is choose love over fear, healing over revenge, and hope over despair. What did you think of Sarah's transformation from federal agent to doctor? Did Tony make the right choice in fighting for their love despite all the deception? And what about Emma's decision to join their mission? Does family mean the people who choose to stand by you through everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing what resonated with you in this story. And if this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button because we specialize in stories that will make you believe in the power of love to transform even the darkest situations into something beautiful. Until next time, remember, the best love stories aren't about perfect people finding each other. They're about imperfect people choosing to build something extraordinary together, one brave decision at a time.